You're listening to Panthers on Tap. I'm Curtis Rauen, joined by Bryson Karbley. We're just two fans sharing our love for the game and Carolina Panthers football. So join us, crack open a cold one, some bubbly, a little wine, some scotch. We don't care, whatever makes you sleep better at night. Before we dive into the episode, a little self-promotion. Stop what you're doing. Go give us a follow on Twitter at Panthers on Tap. Join the discussion on our Facebook group. We have over 2,500 members. You can listen to us wherever you get your podcast. Just search Panthers on Tap. Bryson, after what it seems like an eternity, the Carolina Panthers have finally won a game. I'm drinking freaking wine tonight to celebrate. So it's all good, man. It's a great time. I know it was a sloppy ass game, but they finally got one.
Yeah, I'm sipping on a solid White Claw. It's all we have now. So I too am celebrating. It is nice to come on here and not say we sound like a broken record every single week. We have 2 wins. Let's celebrate when we get them. And I'm not about the Debbie Downer, making people feel bad for being happy about a win. My goal is to not give Chicago the number 1 overall pick, and we are inching closer to maybe not doing that. So I am happy that we get to talk about a win today.
Yeah, and they spoiled the Falcons. They're pretty much eliminated at this point. I think they may have a small chance, but for the most part, they spoiled their shot, and Desmond Ridder has really gone down the tubes. He's benched again. So, yeah, I mean, the Titans kind of played spoiler on the Panthers a couple of weeks ago before Frank got fired, and now the Carolina is putting some heat on Atlanta and even Arthur Smith. I mean, I know there's been questions now with Arthur Blank if he's going to retain him. I kind of would like him to retain him and keep him for just another year yet. But, yeah, it's good. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about the game. Obviously a sloppy one. I went to it. You cannot call me a fair weather fan whatsoever. Went to the game, got lower seats, was under the overhang, but I was still kind of getting rained on. And then there was no one in the stands. And the first row of the end zone was sitting wide open. So after the first quarter, went to the bathroom and went straight to that first row and sat there the rest of the game. So it was pretty awesome. But yeah, it was just constant rain. And I don't think I watched some of the TV broadcast last night a little bit, the last drive. It did not do it justice from what TV showed. I mean, it was just a constant rain, soaked the entire game. Feet were wet. But they were in it and they won. So it just made it that much better. But let's talk about this one. What did you see from Bryce in this game?
Yeah, I mean, I think considering the weather, I think that he played extremely well. I think this was one of his best games as a Carolina Panther, especially when you take into the fact that final drive, what was it, 87, 92 yards, somewhere in there, that he manufactured to get the game-winning field goal. I thought that drive was methodical. He was doing everything he needed to do. The line was blocking for him, which we're going to get into in a little bit, but the line was blocking for him. The running game was somewhat effective, and I feel like things were just finally going Carolina Panthers' offense way. So in return, we got Bryce playing pretty good ball. Of course, he wasn't perfect. Nobody was on the field, but when you take into account the rain, you were there. You know how heavy it was. It didn't seem terrible on TV, but from all accounts, it was. I think that, this is a game that you are happy to see from Bryce and the offense in general. DJ Shark with the awesome sideline catch, probably his best catch as a Carolina Panther. Mingo continuing to make strides every week. I tweeted about it today. And you go ahead and take over for a second. I got to take care of my cat who is making noise back here. So give me 1 second.
No, you're good. But yeah, I thought Bryce did really well with the circumstances that were given. We can talk about the last drive. It was a sloppy game for them to come out. I think we both expected it to be a very low scoring game, and that it was that. And I thought Bryce handled it really well. I mean, the guy completed 75% completion on throws. And I know they didn't throw it a time. They threw it 24 times, but to go out and do that in those kind of elements, and I know it was a low passing yards game for him, but it was impressive. And he made big time throws when he needed to. And when I'm saying big time, that's like all caps, like some damn good throws. And hats off to Coach Tabor, because it sounded like they were practicing this way. They were practicing with wet balls during the week, and I'm sure that helped them a little bit too. But yeah, I thought Bryce did a damn good job in this one. And now what? He's got 2 game-winning drives under his belt. I mean, there are some QBs that have come onto this team that haven't had many of those. So for him to get, he's got that clutch gene when it matters. And it was on display in college. And the one that comes to mind, and I think they mentioned this in the press conference too, that I remember watching him when we were kind of looking at QBs this offseason, is that Auburn game a couple of years ago, where he, goes up and ends up winning the game, or ends up tying it. They go in overtime. He ends up winning the game. So he has got that clutch factor, and he's just so even keel. It was a 90-yard drive. I just looked up. Go to 90 yards, and those big time throws. That one to Chark was a beautiful pass. Couldn't put it anywhere else, and Chark made a hell of a catch. I mean, it was just beautiful pass, beautiful catch. So I thought he played really well, just off the circumstances. Obviously, they need to clean things up. I think there's no doubt about that. This game was not pretty at times. I think they still tend to shoot themselves in the foot on drives. So that needs to Gabe Jackson had a couple. I think I thought I counted 2 holding penalties on him. PFF's got it at 1. We'll look at the stats here a little bit. But again, they had a couple trips in the red zone that just turned into field goals. So those things, when you're playing a team when there's not weather involved, like this upcoming weekend, you got to be able to put up points. So that, I think, needs to be an emphasis moving forward. But hats off to Bryce. I thought he played really well.
Yeah, and they should have had a touchdown, and Thielen dropped another good pass from Bryce. He keeps getting unlucky with these touchdowns. I feel like that he's had 3 or 4 touchdowns dropped this year by his tight ends and wide receivers. So should have put up more points if Thielen catches the ball, but unfortunately that wasn't the case. But we still got the win, so it doesn't matter in the end.
Yeah, let's bring up these offensive line stats from PFF here. And it was, I mean, a lot of green. It was good. It was good. I didn't include Nash Jensen. I know he was in there for a bit, and then Gabe Jackson came in later. Was he hurt? I don't know if that was a move because he just wasn't playing well. Because I was like,
I think he was just benched.
Okay, I didn't know if they had mentioned it during the game. I just know that he came in later. But and just for folks that don't know, what I did with this chart, if it's just their name, there was no bad stats against them. So it was zeros across the board. So as you can tell, I think this was Bradley Bozeman's best game of the year, hands down. I mean,
Absolutely.
Just clear across the board. And you mentioned it last week. He's making steps every week. Taylor Moton just been a rock all year. His numbers dipped a little bit, looks like, in the run game. But, I mean, when you see green across the passing game in a very sloppy game like this, it's good to see.
Absolutely. And I thought Gabe Jackson came in and played really well. He did have that holding penalty and gave up a sack, but that production from that position for Carolina is probably the best it's been all year. And Gabe came in and really solidified that right guard spot. So hopefully they can build off that in these last couple games and give Bryce a chance to put some better tape out going into next year. Ekwonu, continues to struggle. His pass blocking grade was a lot better this week, but run block not great. And then, overall wasn't the best, but it's definitely not the worst that he's had this year. So Kate Mays, I think, has been solid, I guess you could say. He could definitely be upgraded at that position, which it will be next year. A question I have for you, Curtis, about the offensive line, since we're on the topic. Going into next season, are you comfortable with Ekwonu at left tackle, or are you kind of on board with the idea that's been floated around of maybe moving Christensen to left tackle and Ekwonu to guard? Where are you at with Ekwonu at this point?
I think he's making some improvements from the start of the year, but also the scheme has changed. So I don't know what he's going to be if they go to this, pass heavy, spread it out type of offense, which I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do because we don't know who the coach is. If they go that route, I think you have to try everything. I think sliding him in at guard is not out of the realm to see if he fits better there. I've always been a Brady guy. I think everyone who's listened to our show knows that. I know you have backed him up too, because I know there's been discussions in the past, can't even believe this was, of Michael Jordan and him, because I think that guy is just useless. But I thought Brady Christensen was serviceable, and obviously when his injury or when he went down this season, that played a major role along with Austin Corbett. So I like Brady. I think if he can come back healthy, I think that will bolster them a little bit here. But yeah, I'm not opposed to trying different things because clearly he has taken a drop, or he's taken a step back, Ekwonu, this year. So, and I do think that's a position, like they guard obviously is a position of need going into next season. So there's going to be, whether it's free agency or the draft, they're going to take a hard look at that position and just offensive line depth in general, because based off of what they want to do next year, things might have to change. Because again, they've switched kind of more to a power run scheme ever since Tabor took over. And, I know Frank did not want to do that whatsoever. And I'm sorry, that's a long-winded question, but yeah, I think you'd be crazy not to be open to see where Icky would fit best along this offensive line.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that you have to keep your options open because you need what is best for Bryce. And, it's been a miracle to this point that he hasn't gotten injured with all the hits he's taken. And I don't think that that's something that you want to continue to put to the test year in and year out. And you want to try to protect him as best you can, especially that interior pressure. So maybe Ekwonu moves to guard and he's the best guard we got. Like, that's a possibility. And I think that that's worth a shot. And then Brady Christensen was the highest rated left tackle in college football history by Pro Football Focus. A lot of people forget that, but he was. And, I think he tried left tackle for a while in Carolina, or not for a while, but for a short period of time. And he was okay. He was serviceable at left tackle, and he's been more than serviceable at guard. But I think giving Christensen another shot with, a couple years under his belt in the NFL to see if he can return to that college form of being a really good left tackle, I think it's worth a shot. So,
and with Christensen too I think coming out of college, the passing game suited him more than run blocking. Mm-hmm. So, and that's kind of what they got into this year. And we didn't really get to see how he would hold up with that. So I think he'd also get better if that's the route they went. But I also think a good offensive or a good head coach is going to see, they already have Bozeman locked in for another year. So you got to tailor that unless they're going to trade him. He doesn't really fit this, spread it out, pass heavy offensive blocking scheme. He just doesn't, Bozeman. Yeah. And so I think a coach is going to probably try to tailor that to the players, because I think if you stick to more of a power run blocking scheme, I think you don't have much to do on the offensive line. But if you have to go to what Frank wanted to do, I think there needs to be a lot of turnover along this O-line for Bryce to be successful, I think. And that's a big fault of Scott Fitterer, because they clearly thought this O-line would fit that scheme, and they were terrible. And the injuries didn't help. I mean, it just compounded everything. But what about the wide receivers? What'd you think of that? I thought Mingo didn't have a ton of catches, but he made some big plays in this one. I'm trying to think of some of the other guys. Obviously, Chark had a big catch in this game. And then Adam Thielen, he had that one drop. But just the progress of the wide receivers.
Yeah, I thought that they included Amir Smith-Marset quite a bit more in this game with the end arounds, and really used him like we've been begging them to do all year. So I was really impressed with that. He was an electric factor for this team on offense, and for an offense that's been non-existent, it was a jolt in the arm, I feel like. And I think that's something that they're going to continue to use. He's every bit of the gadget player that Laviska Shenault is. And I think he's only going to going to continue to get better with the more reps that he has. I think Jonathan Mingo is getting better every single week in the NFL. This is his rookie year. He's getting used to the NFL, and I think he's continuing to build and progress through each game. He's a willing blocker. I tweeted this out earlier. He's a willing blocker, and his route running has really improved from week 1 to now. So he's still got room to grow. He's not a wide receiver one, bona fide wide receiver one yet, but he is improving, and that is what you want to see from an early second-round pick, that like Jonathan Mingo, who's been outperformed by wide receivers taken after him. So, I thought it was okay. I think we only had 4 wide receivers up, and they used all 4. Sullivan, I think, has been a bright spot for this team. Tight end and Trimble as well has been solid. But yeah, I was impressed with the work they put on the field on Sunday.
Yeah, speaking of the tight ends, and I get it, the passing game really hasn't had a lot of success this season, so it's hard to point to one position group and put blame on them, but they just still cannot figure out a tight end like true number 1 5, 6, 700 yard tight end receiver in a season. It's just, I don't get it. I don't understand it. There's glimpses that Trimble shows. Sullivan, obviously, he's got some connection with Bryce, but it still is this outlier group that Carolina just cannot figure out and couldn't figure out since Greg Olsen left. And obviously that guy, I mean, he's a hell of a player, so that's a huge void to fill, but no one has even scratched the surface to come close to any production he has had. It's just, and that was something Frank, was known for, and he loved his tight ends, and you just didn't see that at all. And even with Tabor, it's just, there's not a lot of production out of that group, and maybe that'll change as obviously the weather played a major role this last week. But I just wanted to point that out because that's something. But yeah, I echo what you do. I think Mingo he's made plays and he's gotten open, I thought, and I didn't get to see the replay on this, and I don't remember when it was, but I remember in the game, I think Bryce missed him on another deep shot this game. I thought I saw him one-on-one in a corner trailing him with no safety over the top, and Bryce didn't pull the trigger. I think Bryce is still a little bit hesitant on what is open in the NFL, and sometimes he needs to just let that thing loose and give his guy a shot. Because I thought there was a play there, and it might have been the third quarter where I thought he had Mingo and he just didn't take it. And I think they still got a first down out of it, but it was just like, damn, dude, like just let that thing loose once or twice. So, but yeah, I think Mingo is slowly coming on. Obviously, he gotten a lot of flack, and I've seen some people talk about this online too that I agree with. Seemed like he was. I don't know if lazy is the right word early on in his route running. I don't know. It just didn't seem like there was a lot of effort there, but I don't see that right now. Like, I feel like he is locked in and he's trying to improve any week. And I think he has up to this point, which is good to see. And you talked about Smith-Marsette already. I thought that was just enough wrinkle to keep Atlanta off the backs a little bit. And it wasn't some crazy, 10, 15 yard plays. It's just like 3 or 4 yards here and there that I think just kept Atlanta guessing on what Carolina was doing. So I like that. I thought that was a good wrinkle by Thomas Brown. And I'm hoping this game will give Bryce Young the confidence to, just keep leveling up his game these last couple of weeks so you can kind of build off that going into the next season. But enough about the offense. Well, we didn't even talk about the backs. Let's talk about the backs a little bit because they played a pretty big role in this game. Chuba Hubbard, man, Scott Fitterer, that was a bad miss with Miles Sanders. It really was, man. Like, to go out and he was the only back to get paid this offseason. Give him that kind of money, and your answer was already on the roster is just like, it's a bad look for him. That's one of the big mistakes I think he's made is Chuba has really come on as the lead back for Carolina.
Yeah, you can almost say that offense is fireable just right there. But yeah, I mean, Chuba, I feel like every time he touches the ball, he runs it as hard as he can. He is 0 to 100 literally as soon as he touches the ball, and he is a bully with it. He's a north-south runner. He doesn't do those little fancy cuts behind the line of scrimmage. He is patient when he needs to be, but north-south, he's going to try to run through anyone. He doesn't care who you are, and he's going to get a couple yards every time he touches the ball. I mean, he's electric. He's not a guy that's going to break off a 60-yard touchdown run, but he's a guy that's going to get you yards when you need yards. And that's something that I think Carolina's slowly learning, which they should have already learned by now. But that they're slowly learning in Carolina. Anytime Miles touched the ball, I think he had 2 yards?
2 yards.
Anytime he touched the ball, it was tackle behind the line of scrimmage or 1 yard, 2 yards total. He's been so, depressing. Really, I mean, we're stuck with him because of his contract. I mean, I guess they can move on. It's not a whole lot of money, but for that position, it is. And I mean, really, you just got to try to make that work. And maybe I
don't get why they don't try more screen. Like, you remember like in Christian McCaffrey days, it was like a screen every other play, like a running back screen. They don't run those. I don't understand that. I don't know if they don't think they have the offensive line for it to get out there in time and block downfield. But you never see a running back screen. And I think Miles Sanders, I think he'd be good at that. And you don't ever see it at all. It's like, and that was like I said, like literally every other play was like a Christian McCaffrey screen. And D'Angelo Williams ran the screen a lot and was really good at it too. But they don't ever run it. They run like a tight end screen to Ian Thomas, which is useless. And we haven't seen that because he's been injured. So thankfully we haven't seen that. I mean, I want to see him healthy, but I don't want to see them running tight end screens with him. But like, that's one I don't get. But I agree with you. Anytime Sanders comes on the field, I'm like, damn, like put Chuba back in. Like especially at the end of the game, Sanders was in there a couple, I think there are 2 or 3 plays in a row. And I'm like, holy shit, we need to get Chuba back in. Like and I think for Chuba, he doesn't dance. He's decisive. Like Sanders dances when he gets the ball, trying to shift. And like, it's just like, dude, just pick your route and go, man. And then sometimes you got to be patient, but he dances too much back there. And I think that's what hurts him. But let's go to the defense, because I think you last week mentioned and kind of calling them out for not getting any turnovers. This week, they came up massive in this game. 2 turnovers. I'm not sure if you know who forced the fumble. I saw Brian Burns recovered it, but I don't know who forced that one.
Yeah.
No, obviously you had Xavier Woods too.
I knew at the time, but let me get that stat real quick. I think it was a safety or a corner, but yeah, I mean, the defense came up huge, obviously. Getting the interception was kind of like Desmond Ridder more than anything else, just being terrible. I mean, he threw it right to Xavier Woods, but
dude, that was the end zone I was in. That was right by me. That was right by me. It was
you
great.
Got a front row seat, huh? Row seat. But I think it might have been Troy Hill that forced the fumble, if I'm not mistaken. I don't have it right in front of me, but yeah, it was. Burns recovered it, and the defense, yeah, I mean, they got turnovers when they needed it, especially on that last drive where they intercepted Ridder. And I thought the game was over when the Falcons were driving. And, they were seemingly looking like they were going to score. And I was like, here we go. Typical Panthers, can't play complimentary football. The offense finally put some points up, took the lead.
Same thing.
Like, this is the same old story. And then I forgot to turn off notifications on my phone. And I saw that the Panthers tweeted, interception. And then I was like, no way. Like, that's not true. And then it pops up, Ridder throws it right to Woods. Like, no clue where Ridder was going with the ball. And subsequently, Ridder's benched, and Tyler Heineke is the quarterback, and Arthur Smith is on the hot seat. So, yeah, I was happy with it. I thought the defense played well all day. Most of the time, got stops when they needed to. Burns had a good game, I think, overall. And Gross Matos had a good game. Derek Brown, of course. Nobody really outside of that on the defensive line. Oh, no, Nick Thurman. Nick Thurman did have a really good game. That's right. I forgot about him. He was popping off on – this is his best game, I think, as a Carolina Panther. He seemed extremely disruptive throughout the whole entire game, especially in the run game, tackling behind the line of scrimmage. I've never been a big fan of Nick Thurman, but, if he can put games together like that, then that's something that is definitely a positive for Carolina going forward. I feel like Luvu struggled in pass
I was
coverage.
about to mention him. Yeah.
They were picking on him, and I think was it Pitts that he was struggling to cover? I think
Yeah.
it was. I
There was
mean,
a play they had Henderson on Pitts, and I'm just that's such a mismatch. He's tiny. He's so small.
he's soft. He's
And
so
Pitts
soft.
is such a big dude, and that was a big third down conversion. And then he had another big third down conversion against Luvu. I don't know if Luvu was supposed to have safety help over the top. It's so hard to know what their coverages are if you're not in their game planning. But yeah, that play pissed me off because that was a big third down. And I think it was a 3rd and long too. So it's just like, so that's frustrating. But, Desmond Ritter is going to Desmond Ritter. He got away with some that week 1. I mean, we were there for that game. I thought there was 1 or 2 opportunities where he fumbled and they didn't recover. And I think there was a play or 2 where it should have been picked and it wasn't. So they capitalized this time and it paid off. And show me the QB who threw that damn ball. So I love it, man. It was awesome. There was one other person. Oh, I got to give, man, Xavier Woods deserves his flowers. He has had low-key a hell of a season. Seriously, I don't think he's getting enough credit. Even the Panthers didn't put his name in their little Pro Bowl tweet they had, and that kind of made him sour a little bit. But he is balling out, and I don't know if he's a free agent after this year. He might be. I'm not sure exactly. But he is definitely playing for another contract, and he's playing really well. I want to say he's probably leading in turnovers this year. I could be wrong on that, but I think he's got 3 or 4 now on the season. So just hats off to him. He's playing really well for Carolina. And Von Bell has been very quiet. And I don't know why. I know he's been injured in and out. But I thought he'd have a way bigger impact on this defense than he has this season, which is kind of disappointing. But again, it could be some sort of injury bug. But I just wanted to point those guys out. And then we got to talk about special teams because Steady Eddie got it done. NFC Special Teams Player of the Week, 3 field goals. Anyone who kicked in that game, it was going to be tough. It was windy. It was constant rain. The turf helps obviously a little bit with that. It's not like it was in that App State bowl game, if you saw that, where it was just a mud bowl. But to kick in those conditions and then to kick the game-winning field goal, and Tabor, obviously special teams coach, to have faith in you to do that is, I mean, that's some big cojones. I mean, that was not easy to do, man. Those conditions sucked. So hats off to Eddie. He's had some roller coaster moments on this team, but this year it's been more highs than lows. So I love it. I love it. And I think that Joe Person pointed out today, that's kind of one of Scott Fitterer's things he's gotten right is this special teams unit, because the punting was really hard in this game too. I didn't expect Johnny Hecker to be hitting these bombs with how windy it was. But Johnny Hecker's always been solid. And then obviously Eddie, and then Amir Smith-Marset, he had that one botch in the game. Thankfully, they got it to bounce. But yeah, special teams has just always been a solid unit for this team, really, since Tabor came in. So
yeah, absolutely. Maybe he sticks around for the next head coach as well through a couple different tenures, but we'll see. My guy Steady Eddie, I love him. He's not got the biggest leg in the league, but he is consistent when he's about 45 yards and in. He's a consistent kicker. And then shout out to Kamu Grugier Hill, who was kicking the squibs.
Yeah, dude, that was weird. When I first saw that, I'm like, what in the heck? I thought they were going to do an onside or something. I'm like, what are they doing? But they clearly have been game planning. He's been practicing that for a while, because that is risky to do. There was one kick where it got close to the sideline. It's like, holy shit, dude. And even does Koo kick off for Atlanta? I don't know does he?
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure either, but they had one out of bounds. Carolina got it at the 40 on one of the drives.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, I think Carolina, I know we're on this high, they're winning, but Carolina, when you're playing teams like you got this week, you have Green Bay, they have Jacksonville, and then they have Tampa Bay to end the year. you got to put up touchdowns. And Carolina, I think, had the ball like I said, they kicked out of bounds, got the ball at the 40. There was a stop that Carolina got. I think it might have been a turnover on downs. Like they had the ball at their own 40 and they didn't get points out of it. That can happen, and it's happened a lot this season. So if that was one negative I have, that's one of them, is they got to do better, get a good field position to get points out of it, even field goals. There were times, I think, and I remember tweeting about this several times throughout the year. They get the ball at the 40 2 or 3 times a game and they can't get a field goal out of it. And that you lose games doing that. So those opportunities don't always come up, and they need to take advantage. And that's what is, they need to do this weekend. So enough about the game. Let's talk about some things that have popped up really over, I think it was today. Yeah, it's today. So Jeremy Fowler put out his article this week, just kind of like rumors, what they're hearing around the league. And he said, this was in his extra notes, way at the bottom of the article, something to monitor in Carolina is a potential pairing a first-time offensive head coach with current defensive coordinator Ejiro Evero. Bryson, we have not talked about this yet, so I want to get your take. What do you make of this? Do you like this? Where's your head at with this kind of thinking for Tepper?
Yeah, I don't like it. I love it. I love it. I love keeping Ejiro Evero on the staff, obviously. When you have the third overall team defense in the NFL with an offense who continually puts the defense back on the field, I think that's pretty impressive with paired with the injuries that the defense has had all year. Ejiro Evero's scheme, he's got players playing their best football. For example, Dante Jackson, who's shined all year in the scheme. J.C. Horn coming back has played well. Troy Hill, guy we signed a couple of weeks before the start of the season, and he's one of our best players on defense overall. I think Ejiro Evero is a very good defensive coordinator. I think that this is something that Carolina would want to do. I don't know if it's something that they're going to be able to do because I think Evero is very close to becoming a head coach. I think when teams around the league, especially Carolina, when they look and they see, this guy has put up the numbers that he has, dealing with all the circumstances that I've just mentioned, I think that teams are going to be impressed. And he's an impressive guy overall. He's well-spoken, a super smart dude whose scheme works. And I think that teams are going to like that. So I would love to, get a guy like Ben Johnson or a guy like Slowick and pair him with Ejiro Evero in Carolina. I think that that's a match made in heaven right there. And I think that that's something that could really, produce wins in Carolina for years to come.
Yeah, I definitely think Evero should be in the running for head coach. I think no doubt about it. And I don't want Carolina doing what they did last year when they probably should have kept Wilkes and went a different route. So I think he definitely should get an interview, hands down. His unit has played lights out this year with numerous injuries, I think more than other teams, and his unit is top 5 in the league, which is insane to think about. I mean, you're talking about Carolina losing Shaq Thompson week 1, not having a guy opposite Brian Burns. You lose J.C. Horn, your number 1 corner, week 1. Von Bell was out several weeks. And I know I'm missing a ton of injuries off the top of my head, but there has been countless times where Carolina has a lot of guys injured this season. And, they lost Justin Houston. He went to IR. That was a guy that was supposed to be, add some edge rush alongside Brian Burns. So no doubt about it, I think he deserves an interview. I'm okay with this if the next head coach is okay with this. If you're going to force this on the next head coach, I'm not a big fan of it because we saw what happened with Frank Reich, and I don't think that alignment worked at all. And I think your head coach and his coaches need to be aligned. And I think that was kind of a disaster waiting to happen that no one expected, and it did. So I think there needs to be alignment with it. So if the next head coach is on board for it, I'm all for it. Because there's several benefits. I don't know if Evero gets a head coach job this cycle, just based off of just how shitty Carolina has been. And he is under contract in Carolina from Fowler's reporting. So Carolina has, I think, the upper hand there. And the also benefit is if he stays 2 years, which would be one more year. So if he stays one more year and then leaves for head coach, they get a 3rd-round pick. So there is benefit to that. And I know that's what David Tepper had in mind when he hired both Thomas, or when he, because I think Tepper is the one who pushed for Evero and Thomas Brown. I think that's pretty damn clear at this point. And for Frank to go outside of his own comfort zone. And you would have Evero for the 2 years, and you'd follow the Shanahan method where he always gets a 3rd-round pick when a black offense or defensive coordinator goes and becomes a head coach. Yeah. So I think there's benefit to that, and I think that's kind of the thinking behind it. But I don't think Tepper needs to be picking who coordinators are for this next head coach. I think that's the wrong way to go about it. So that's what makes me a little leery. I do think Evero is a hell of a coordinator. And I pointed this out today because I know a lot of people are like, oh, you're already setting the next head coach up for failure, and this is already red flags. But Miami followed this method. They had Mike McDaniels, and they had a defense coordinator that they kept from the previous regime. And then that defensive coordinator was an assistant once Fangio came in, so he's still on the coaching staff. And Indianapolis did it this year with Shane Steichen. So with Gus Bradley. So it has worked. Owners have done it before, but I just think, I hope if they do this route, he is on board with it, because I think it's a mistake if they don't. But yeah, Ben Johnson and Evero, if that, that's a damn good unit right there. I love everything about that. Well, let's go to the other report today. Joe Person put out he's always got these spicy articles, man. It's like in December, it starts rolling out. He starts laying it out there. But he put out basically an article today of the good, bad, and ugly or I think he called it the good, bad, and TBD of Scott Fitterer on The Athletic. If you guys do not have an Athletic membership, I think they're doing a deal right now. It's like $1 for an entire year. It's worth it. There's a lot of good stuff in there. But yeah, he said today, Scott Fitterer has received no reassurances about his future with the team. Not too much of a big shock here, but just your thoughts on this, Bryson.
Yeah, just a side note before I start on that. I think another thing to add to our previous point about the first-year offensive coordinator head coach is that there was a report that David Tepper was really friendly with Ben Johnson's agent throughout some, I think, owner meetings or NFL meetings in New York, that they spent a lot of time together. So that's an interesting point that was pointed out. I think it might have been Jeremy Fowler that mentioned that.
Yeah, I remember pushing. What was that? It might have been Breer. I know I put something about that. I can't remember, but yeah, that was. I love that. That just gets me excited. I so want Ben, but yeah.
But yeah, as to this point, I don't really think that this is a whole lot of new news. I don't know why a GM that has had so many failures would have reassurances about his job next year. I think this is just kind of obvious to me at this point. If he would have said Scott Fitterer not likely to return after this season, then I think that's more noteworthy.
But it's the first time it's really been on in writing. We kind of all knew this, but now that it's legitimately in writing, I don't think there's any question that his job is in jeopardy. If you had any sort of, because I don't know if you saw Cameron. I think it was Cameron Wolf when he did the interview with Kyle Bailey and Steve Smith. He said he didn't know if Scott Fitterer would be fired when he was talking to them. He's like, I don't know if I think he said something to the effect of it might be too early to tell, because he was obviously under the Matt Rule regime and really didn't have a lot to say. And this was his truly first year as a GM. So that kind of was that was the first time I ever heard on a reporter side with that. Most of them are yeah, Scott's on the hot seat type thing. But to see this now where it's actually in writing, I think a lot of us knew that coming in. But yeah, I just wanted to point that out.
Are you are you in favor of moving on after this year from Scott Fitterer, or do you think
Oh,
that
100%.
okay?
100%. Yeah, this year was bad. Like, I think Bryce Young is going to be a stud. Um, but beyond that, and Mingo, I think has potential. I think too many people gave up on him too early on. But for like DJ Johnson to trade up, Matt Corral trade up, cut him a year later, um, the Sam Darnold trade. I get it. That's Matt Rule pushing that, but you're making the decision on that. Like you're giving up a lot, and then you go out and you sign, or you pick up the 5th-year option before he even plays it down. Extending Robbie Anderson was a mistake, but he kind of saved himself with the draft picks he got. So that was kind of a wash there. The Christian McCaffrey trade, I have not gone back to listen myself, but I'm almost positive I was pissed that they didn't get a first for him. And now looking at it, they got snubbed in that trade. I mean, that shit wasn't fair at all. At all. This guy's in MVP conversations and you didn't get a first-round pick for him. It's pathetic.
Yeah,
And then you look at it now, you should have probably traded Brian Burns if you couldn't get him to a long-term deal. And DJ Moore would probably still be here then too. So like there's countless things that I think have added up over time. And he's obviously been under the cloud of Matt Rule too. So it's hard to pick and choose, but you just got to look at it across the board. He was the guy at the helm, and it's just it hasn't been good. And this free agency has been terrible too. I didn't even get to mention that. So like I think it's time. I think it's time for a clean slate across the board.
yeah, I
Do it
agree.
the right way.
I agree, and I think that one of the bigger issues is the scouting department in Carolina that has continually missed in rounds, really 1 through 7, except for this year with the first overall pick. I still think was the correct pick. Um, they haven't hit on a late round pick in a long time, and you got teams that have 5th, 6th, 7th round picks playing valuable time on defense and offense for them that are winners that win games, and this scouting department just continually fails. Like DJ Johnson sticks out to me. Yeah, he was a kind of a athletic freak, but you got guys like Nick Herbig, who you were a fan of, that's making a difference with the Steelers. He's a difference maker. He probably could have been a legitimate starter opposite Brian Burns in Carolina. The Steelers have depth at that position.
Yeah, and Herbig hasn't even really played much this season because they do have so many guys in front of him. So.
Yeah, so I mean, he could have been the guy that we're looking for, and instead we got DJ Johnson, who's a healthy scratch. Like it's disappointing.
And TMJ's another big one. They traded up for him, right? Did they trade up for him in the second round? I thought they did ahead of the Saints and drafted him.
Yes, yep. You're right. I do remember.
It was a minor trade up. It was like a couple picks, but they trade up for him. He's a healthy scratch right now. Like, and I get it. Maybe he didn't align with this coaching staff, but like shit like that's a second round pick too. That's like you got to hit on first and second rounders. Yeah. Those 2 rounds you got to hit on. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's hard to hit on always. It is, but you see GMs do it all the time. I mean, there's Eagles hit almost every year. Detroit Lions had a hell of a draft this year. The New Orleans Saints had a hell of a draft a couple years ago. The Seahawks, when Fitterer was there, had a hell of a draft. There's countless other teams. And I think Scott, if he does get fired, I think he will get another shot somewhere else. I do. I think he's pretty well known around the league. He's liked around the league. Person reported that today. I do think he gets another shot, and I don't think he would be terrible in a whole different regime. And I just think the way it has been with him and the cloud over him and what has his track record has been with this team, at times I think he's been too aggressive. But on the flip side of that, it's like, and I was thinking about this on the drive in today to work, is if you get rid of him, and I would be shocked if this isn't the national narrative, is people are going to say, oh, well, they think they should have went with Stroud. And that is going to be what the national narrative runs with. Like, they should have drafted Stroud over Bryce Young. When in reality, none of those people really know the moves that he's made over his tenure. And that really isn't the reason. And that's what I'm most worried about. And also, like, should he get another shot because he just drafted your franchise quarterback? And is that a bad look because he's the one who made that trade for him? But again, it's just he's made so many mistakes.
So. Yeah. I think those are all good points, but ultimately, I don't really personally care what the national media thinks. I think that getting Bryce the correct help around him as fast as you can is the most important thing. And the offensive line needs to be better. The wide receivers need to be better. The tight ends need to be better. Brian Burns needs help opposite. Brian Burns needs to be paid first. Then Brian Burns needs help opposite of him. Like there's a lot of holes on this team that need to be fixed. Linebacker is an issue. Shaq Thompson's getting old. He's coming off of major injury. Frankie Louvu is good, but he can't do it all himself. And
yeah, I think Shaq's going to be done. I do. I mean, it was only a 1-year deal, wasn't it? I think it was. Maybe I'm wrong on that. Sure. But yeah, I mean, there are holes, and obviously offense, I think, is going to be the big one this offseason, is getting that right. And the defense might take a hit because of it. Brian Burns, Frankie Louvu, God knows, I hope not Derek Brown, but yeah, there's gonna have to be changes made too. And we haven't even talked about the first round picks with Scott Fitterer. There's questions about Ike Ekwonu. There's questions about J.C. Horn. So, and some will say, I don't believe this, but there's questions about Bryce Young. I think he's going to be a good QB in this league, but many believe, was he the right pick too? So, like, yeah, there's a lot of question marks. I think I seriously think it's just a matter of time. I think Scott is going to be let go. It'll probably be at the end of the season. And what I'll be curious to see is, does Samir stick around? Because he has also been tied to that as well. Do they completely get rid of all of that and start fresh? Because if you keep one around, you're still going to have, it's just not a complete reset at that point.
Yeah.
So I'll be curious to see that moving forward. But let's talk about the game this weekend. Man, oh man, I'll tell you what. This game could not have come at a worse time. So for those that don't know, I'm going back home. If you can't hear it in my goddamn voice, from Wisconsin, probably sound Canadian, but I'm going back home this weekend, and I have to sadly watch this game in Green Bay when I'd love to be sitting at frickin' Bank of America Stadium rooting against the Packers, but just can't happen. I got to wait another year. I literally have not seen them play in Carolina. I've seen it in Green Bay, and it was an awful experience because they got their ass kicked. And they might get their ass kicked this weekend, really. But let's talk about this matchup. Green Bay, I think they're on a 3-game skid. Maybe it's a 2-game skid. I'm not. It's a 2-game skid. So they've lost 2 in a row. And yeah, let's talk about it. I know my buddies are going to be watching this, so I better be brushed up. What do you think about this matchup?
Yeah, I'm excited for Bryce Young to get a chance to go against Joe Barry, one of the best defensive coordinators in the league. Just kidding. He's awful. The Packers defense sucks. They gave up. Let me tell you Tommy DeVito's stats versus the wonderful Green Bay Packers. He had a decent game, 158 yards and a touchdown, 71 yards rushing. Then the next week, Baker Mayfield in Carolina last year. Baker has his best game since being a Brown versus this defense, 381 yards and 4 touchdowns. He had a perfect passer rating versus this Packers defense. This defense is struggling. They lost both of those games to the Giants and to the Bucs. Jordan Love has not looked good the past couple weeks. Their offense hasn't in general looked good either overall. I think that this game is going to be a good game. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I think the Panthers are going to be right there with the Packers the whole entire time. The Panthers are going to have to score touchdowns, or there's no way around that, because I do think Jordan Love is good enough to at least score a couple touchdowns in Carolina. But I think that this is going to be a close game because of how bad the Packers defense is right now. Joe Barry is not a good coordinator. I know a lot of Packers fans want him out, and rightfully so because he's been bad. But yeah, I'm excited for the Panthers defense to have a chance at Jordan Love because I think they could get a couple turnovers out of him, and I'm excited for Bryce Young to have a chance at Joe Barry and put up hopefully his best game as a Panther and throw for over 200 yards and maybe a couple touchdowns.
So I got a text from a former college roommate. This was on Sunday night. So this was after both teams played. And he texted me out of the blue. I haven't talked to him. Let's see the date on this. Last time I talked to him was in March of this year when the Panthers traded for Bryce Young. Or I mean, when the Panthers traded for the Bears. But he texted me Sunday night and he said, Joe Barry is going to make Bryce Young look like the number one pick next Sunday. So Packers fans do have no faith in Joe Barry. I've listened to my buddies for weeks. They have wanted him fired time and time again. That is the overwhelming consensus among Packers fans. I'm still reluctant though with this Panthers offense because it was against Atlanta, divisional game, low scoring rain. I think the rain really helped Carolina in that game. And I'm not confident yet in this offense to say they're going to light up the scoreboard. We haven't seen it yet. So I'm reluctant to say that. I do think obviously Joe Barry, if he's calling the game, I think that's going to play into a little bit. And the Packers, I'm looking at their injury report. Devondre Campbell did not practice today. If he is in a go, I think that could be big for them with, Panthers offense going against their defense. Darnell Savage did not practice. So if a couple of those guys are out, I think that'll help out. My biggest concern is against the Packers run game. I'll always be that way against anyone Carolina plays is the run game because they tend to struggle against the run. And obviously this last week, they limited it. We didn't even talk about Atlanta going with Cordero Patterson more than Bijan. I mean, and I don't know if it was more. I didn't look at the numbers, but it seemed like it was a lot more. I mean, that I did not understand that.
I think Tyler Algier was the leading carrier, had the most carries.
And then Patterson, I mean, that guy, yeah. I think that was kind of their secret weapon this past week was him. But yeah, AJ Dillon, I mean, Quad Squad. I can't remember. He's from Quad University. I mean, the guy's quads are like his legs are they're fucking huge. Like he is a powerhouse. So he kind of scares me. And then Aaron Jones, he hasn't played, and I think he's going to be coming off injury. So if he's healthy, they're going to have both of those guys. They both scare me. But I think it comes down to what Jordan Love are you going to get? Are you going to get the Jordan Love who played the Kansas City Chiefs, or are you going to get the Jordan Love? And I can't think off the top of my head his bad games, but as of late, are you going to get that type of Jordan Love? So that's, I think, the key. Also, I think Christian Watson, he has not played, I think, the last 2 weeks with an hamstring injury. So is he going to be back this week? I don't think he practiced. Let me make sure. Yeah, he didn't practice on Wednesday. So if he is out, I think that really helps them. But if he's in there, that's going to be tough. You got Dobbs, you got Watson. They got that rookie that's escaping.
Jaden Reed.
Yeah, Michigan, right? Yeah. Michigan kid. So they got some players. I think it's going to weigh heavily on what you're going to get out of Jordan Love. Hopefully we get what we've seen of late from this team, because when Jordan Love hits, has a couple turnovers, I think that's where you can get them. But if you can't get that, I think if it's going to be a shootout, I don't think Carolina lasts at all. I just don't see it. I don't think they're there yet. So let's go prediction. What do you got?
Yeah, I think I don't think it's going to be a shootout. I think Jordan Love's going against the third overall ranked defense in the NFL. So I think he's going to have his hands full with that. But I do think the Packers probably do end up winning just because Carolina's offense, although it's not going to be a shootout, they struggle to score points every single week, and I'm not sure if that's going to change even against a bad defense called by Joe Barry. But I do think it's going to be a close game. I'll go Green Bay 21, Carolina 14.
Man, I hope they win. I really do. I don't know where we're watching this game, but if it's in public, It's going to be fun. It'll be interesting. Man, fuck it. I'm picking the Panthers in this one. Why
Whoa!
not? Let's go. What did you say? What was your score?
21-14. I got the Packers winning.
21-14. Let's go. I'll go 21-17. Carolina win. No. There's got to be a field goal or two in there. Let's go 2017. 2017 Carolina wins. Close game. I think would essentially knock the Packers out of playoff contention. They still might have a shot with that, but man, that would be awesome. Oh, it would be great. So let's go with that. 2017 Carolina wins. But this will be our last episode of the year. We're going to take a week off during Christmas. So we will be back in the new year, but we just want to thank everyone for tuning in to the Panthers on Tap podcast. You can catch our episodes wherever you get your podcasts. Go give us a follow on Twitter at Panthers on Tap for all your analysis and breaking news. Have a great holiday. Well, no matter what or how you celebrate, we wish you guys a very Merry Christmas. And as always,